This is Tim with Conservative News from Montana. I'm here in Butte, Montana, where Congressman Rosendale will be here to visit with the people and to hear the people's voices and to carry them back to Washington.
Okay, so just to give everybody a little bit of an overview of what's been going on for the last 60 days, in case you haven't turned on your television, I would love to say that it's been really quiet in Washington, but it has not. It's been very noisy, but they're not accomplishing much of anything, unfortunately. When I got into town, obviously we had to go through the electors to accept or reject the electors. We went through the impeachment process. We go through all that. I will tell you that after serving in the Montana legislature, the most disappointing thing to me, honestly, was that when we arrived in town, I was used to having all my friends and colleagues from across the state, Republicans, Democrats, come together on the opening day for the legislature. Tim can vouch for this, and everybody embraces, and you sort of greet each other, and you go into the House chambers, and you have this really nice ceremony where the process begins, and the speaker gives a upbeat, positive message talking about unity and the things that we want to accomplish. So that's sort of what I had myself prepared for. And what I walked into was an extremely toxic environment. Nancy Pelosi delivered after she was elected speaker, which, oh, by the way, everybody was so concerned about COVID. She was more concerned about making sure she was elected as speaker, to the point that she actually had, who watches ice hockey? Anybody watch an ice hockey game? Okay. She had a penalty box built up in the gallery. I am not exaggerating, out of plexiglass, to keep 3 of her members up there that had tested positive for COVID, so that they could vote for her, because she knew that that's how close the majority was for them to get it. Anyway, she delivered a very mean-spirited, divisive speech, and I thought, you know, I thought that we were going to, at least on day one, try to work together, but you know, I mean, I'm built for fighting, and if this is what it's going to be, then I guess that's just what it's going to be. And so yes. I've been fighting for you every day ever since. And there's plenty of people standing in line to participate in it. Let me tell you, anyone who 3 years ago was arguing to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate so we could accomplish something, I hope that you're thinking about that now that we're in the minority, because the filibuster rule is the only thing from keeping the Democrats from destroying our country, because the legislation that they are passing in the House is terrible. They stopped construction on the border wall and have opened up the border, and then to supplement that, they want to grant amnesty, okay, to everybody that comes across the line. They passed legislation to defund police at the federal level, the George Floyd legislation, and this week they're going to be trying to pass legislation to take our guns away. They killed week 1 through cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline, through cancellation of the construction of the border wall. They destroyed 100,000 jobs across this nation, and yet yesterday they sent out, which is very close to being 50% of the annual collections that they even take in tax revenue. So that's basically just another loan that everybody is going to have to pay back. They say, you know, that's our tax dollars. That's a loan, and that the amount is so big now that my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are going to have to pay back. I've got a debt clock that I keep in the office, and it's well over $28 trillion. Just to put it in perspective, we have a hard time like relating to these numbers, because you hear about $100 million and you hear about $1 billion, and you know, you start putting a few $1 billion together and you get some big numbers, okay? We spend just about $5 billion a year, every year in the state of Montana. That's Medicaid, that's corrections, that's highways, that's K-12 education. I mean, that is everything, about $5 billion a year, a little bit more. That $2 trillion that the Democrats just spent yesterday, just to put it in perspective, you could stop all tax collections in the state of Montana. Think about this. No taxes, John. No
I
taxes.
don't pay any help.
Take that off of the film.
I'm going to jail.
No property tax, no income tax, no cigarette tax, no beer tax, zero taxes, okay, across the state of Montana. And do you know how long $2 trillion would run us? 380 years. 380 years tax-free. Okay.
That would be awesome.
I just left the mine up the hill here, and I will tell you something. We've got all of these environmentalists trying to shut down the production of the resources in this country at the same time that they're saying we've got to develop all the renewables so that we have electric cars and turbines making our electricity. And for some reason, there's a big disconnect that they don't understand. Regardless of what you're doing, you're going to have copper. You're going to have these ores from the earth in order to create society. And they just don't want to hear about it. And what I say is, if they truly believed what they were preaching, and that is that they want to save the environment, they want to protect the environment, well, by golly, there's no place in the world that does it safer than the United States does. There's no place in the world that does it more environmentally sound than the United States does. And there's no place in the world that treats their workers better than the United States does. And if they truly believed all the rhetoric that they were spewing out there, they would demand that the mining took place here in the United States of America. And that's what I do. So we're going to keep these places open.
All right.
I'll be starving if you do.
Yeah. So it's going to be a tough battle for the next couple of years. Again, thank goodness the filibuster is in place, because we're hoping that that's going to keep some of the most destructive legislation from getting through the Senate and being implemented. Any one of these pieces would absolutely destroy our country as we know it today. But what I want you to keep an eye on is the most destructive one, and that's H.R. 1. That's their priority. And what the Democrats have figured out, I'm a policy geek, I admit to it. I focus on fiscal responsibility. I focus on trying to make sure that we can develop our resources. I'm down into the policy. But the Democrats have started focusing on the procedure, because they know if they can control the procedure, they can control the outcome. And if they control the outcome, then they can implement whatever policy that they want to. And H.R. 1 is a complete federalization of the elections, and it is very dangerous and destructive. They would mandate that you cannot have photo ID. They would mandate that you must have same-day registration. The exact same things that we have moved away from, our legislature have moved away from, they're trying to impose it upon us and make it a mandate from the federal level. So that is really the piece of legislation that everybody needs to make sure that you put pressure on our good senator from Big Sandy, because our good senator from Bozeman, he's going to oppose that. He understands it. But our senator from Big Sandy, not so much. We need to put pressure on him to make sure that he does not give any support to this whatsoever. And as long as we can keep the filibuster in place, we'll be okay. With that, I can open up for a couple of questions. I think I have some time yet. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to put the stimulus in another perspective. If the stimulus is $2 trillion and 10% of it goes towards $1,400 checks, if 100% of that $2 trillion went to those checks would be $140,000 each. Now that would stimulate them.
And now, okay, this is nothing more than a marketing technique, because they're calling that the COVID relief, and it is not. You're going to have about 9% of that towards COVID relief, and we have already established that we are coming out of this. People are getting vaccinated. The drop off for the hospitalizations and the positive testing is falling dramatically and it's falling rapidly. So most of the spending that's involved in this bill wouldn't even take place for several years out. So and in addition to that, there's already right now still in the bank $1 trillion that could be dedicated towards these things, including $59 billion for education and $58 billion for state and local communities and $280 billion for the PPP program. I mean, there are funds available that have not even been spent yet. So we get into the 118th Congress, 16, 17, I'm 17 now, so the 118th Congress, and my hope is that a lot of this has not been spent, that we can actually go back in and return it to, I would love to say we would return it to the taxpayers, but guess what? It's borrowed money, so we can pay the loan off and send it back into the bank to pay the loan off. So,
The best stimulus would be reopening America and abolishing payroll taxes.
sure. What we have to do is get the population healthy, and we're well on our way to that, and then we'll get our economy healthy.
Because tax
That's
day
what
is
we have to
every
do.
other Friday.
Matt, quick question. I was watching TV the other day, and Henry Cuellar was flipping out about the invasion of the border in his district. He happened to mention he was a Blue Dog Democrat. I didn't know there were any of
There
those.
are. There's Blue Dog Democrats. People often ask me that. Aren't there any moderate Democrats up there anymore? There are.
mentioned.
They are. The problem is that they're afraid. The power and the money in the Democrat Party right now is on the extreme. I'm not talking about left, folks. I'm talking about the extreme left. These people are Marxist, socialists, trying to destroy this nation. And so anybody who is not part of that ilk, they whip them into shape and say, if you do not come with us, then you will not be here with us next election cycle. And so they have beat them. And as much as they're canceling us and canceling our opinion and our voice, let me tell you something, they're canceling within their own party as well.
Well, the ones that cave, they don't belong there.
So how do you plan to fight states' rights? How to preserve state rights?
I work on states' rights every day. So as these people are outside yelling right now, quite frankly, what that's about is because of states' rights. Because I won't pass legislation at the federal level to empower the unions. That is all that yelling is about. But I also won't pass legislation at the federal level to weaken unions. These are things that need to be done at the state level. And I always support states' rights.
Something on unions. I don't know how many of you know, but I belong to 4 unions. I had to belong to the union to work in this town. And I always felt that I was the best operator, equipment operator, truck driver, or whatever. And you couldn't hire off the bank and get somebody to take my job because I was better than anybody else. But it gets so that you have guys that slough on it, and the unions aren't doing their job. It's just like the head of the pipe fitters union on the XL pipeline. He says, well, they can go to other jobs. What does it take? If you've traveled around construction jobs, as I have for years before we were married,
Don't go there, John. Don't go there. Oh my gosh.
but it's tough to break up and head off. If you're single, you can do it.
Right.
With a family, you can't. What about those people that have those families? Breaks up, then he's out on another job, another place, starting new on something.
Here's what I know. Here's what I know. And that is the Democratic Party is shutting down our mines. The Democratic Party just shut down the Keystone Pipeline. The Democratic Party just shut down the construction of the border wall. It's a system. It's not just a wall, folks. There's so much technology down there. I went and visited it about a month and a half ago. It's a system. People think, well, that's not affecting us. Oh, yes, it is. One of the main contractors for that wall construction, 2 of them. One was Tom Fisher. He's out of North Dakota. He sure is our neighbor. He has facilities here in Montana. The other guy, Tim Barnard. out of Bozeman. Tim Barnard told me himself he's laying people off for the first time in his company's history. Those were dollars that were coming straight back to the state of Montana, okay? And the Democratic Party is shutting down jobs. Don't tell me that you're protecting the union when you're shutting down jobs, because I may not be the smartest guy in the world or in this room, but what I do know is if there's no jobs, you can't organize. It is that simple.
Well, MRI is a union.
Not union.
Yeah, they are. All the workers are union there. Yes,
When
they
did that
are.
start? I
They,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
they are. MRI is union.
Really?
Not the administrators, none of the heads. The workers are union.
What union?
Shit, I don't know. They're union. I don't know.
I'll
what they are.
ask them down.
Yeah,
I go
they're
down there every
they're
day.
MRIs because I talked to the guys that were driving trucks. They're like, yeah, we're union, and I said, why? Why? You're in mining. Why are you union? Well, because they make us be. So they're cutting off the nose to spite their face because if they shut the mine down, they're all out of jobs and they're not getting their 4-wheel drives every week. You know, or
I'm
4-wheel
pretty
drives.
ticked off at my state representative, who's a Republican, who voted against right to work. Pretty ticked off at Walsh.
So, we have any more questions in here? If not, go get something to eat.
Grab a bite.
Yeah, MRI is union.
Renters don't have to pay their rent, but homeowners have to pay their rent.
The mortgage.
And they're losing their rents.
Yeah.
And there's no help.
And these are, again, the problems when we start rewarding bad activity. And you've got the exact
John, I
same
bet you-
thing
I bet you
that
it's
is
local
built
400.
into this $2
Because
trillion.
my dad, yeah, I think it is
You're
because
talking
they're
about
operators. I bet you it's 400.
billion
That's what my dad was, and I think that's what they are. Because Dustin,
blue states that ran their
He said that
states
they're-
improperly to
drag
backfill a
trucks
lot
and
of these
operate
things.
equipment.
We have got to
Because
get
my
back
husband
to the people that make obligations, that they have to pay those obligations.
think they
Now,
were, because we had a guy that
I have
worked here.
not talked to a financial institution that would not defer at the time which somebody had in order to get that money paid back. They just need to know what's going on. But you can't say, these folks are gonna get money,
my dad was too.
don't
They
have to
screwed
pay
over,
it
so
back at all.
that's why I don't like
But these
unions.
people are obligated. We can't have that double standard. That's where the problem is.
We have a union, so you don't have to.
You're not going against the
You want to work around
Constitution.
here?
What's that?
They're dictating how we run our elections.
It is, and they're taking certain provisions of HR 1, because HR 1 has so many things that are jammed in it. What they're doing is taking certain provisions of it and evaluating that to see if there are constitutional challenges that they can utilize.
It's an amendment.
Because like the
Exactly.
executives,
They
like,
were,
So that isn't something.
I mean, big time. They would stop.
Exactly, and if you go through,
Tom McCann.
good news, bad news kind of a thing, we're seeing a lot of these executive orders that
and then they're
are
funded.
being passed, and executive orders, you can make something happen really quick, but you can also turn it around really quick. You can cancel it. And also, it can be challenged and tied up in court a lot easier. So I've been working with the Attorney General here. You've got Austin Knudsen, our newly elected Attorney
God
General.
bless our Attorney General.
He's a great, great guy. He's a great guy. I went into the legislature with him in 2011. We came in the same year. And so anything that gets by the Senate, then I'm going to be working with Austin to see what we can do to file some lawsuits that tie it up in the courts for a while, to keep some of this most destructive stuff from taking place over the next couple of years.
One quick
Tim.
question,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Do you have a message of how we, the people of Montana, can actually step up a little more from our positions to help you in the swamp, to
Yeah.
get on the top of it so you don't get drugged down in it? That's one of the things that we have missed in a lot of times, and we need to make sure that we do that.
Look, people have to examine themselves. The way you get dragged down in the swamp is that I hear a lot of people say that Washington makes you corrupt. Okay? Washington doesn't make anybody corrupt. What it does is it exposes corruption. If you go up there and you are a principled individual, you see people go and they serve and they come back home again, which is exactly what our founders intended. If you're a corruptible individual, then you are a corruptible individual. And you'll stay there as an elected official, or you'll stay on as a lobbyist thereafter, okay? So the individual and their makeup. What I can tell you is for the next 2 years, where we are going to need assistance is to put as much pressure on John Tester as possible to make sure that we don't have the filibuster go away. That is really important. And again, they inserted, Steve Daines was able to get inserted into the spending bill, the Keystone Pipeline, okay? If John Tester had voted to keep that in, we would still have construction taking place today on the Keystone Pipeline, and we would have those additional 200 jobs in the state. We would have that $80 million worth of tax revenue coming to our state, and we would have about 10,000 more jobs across the country. And so we all need to continue to put pressure on John Tester that he does the right thing to serve the state of Montana for the next 2 years.
Thank you so much for standing
Thank
up
you.
for the people of Montana.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.